If we can open forms using VBA, then we also need to be able to close them. That way we can remove some of Access's interface and allow people to only use the icons and buttons that we give them. So if we firstly create ourselves a little form, quick form in design mode, and all this is going to do is open another form so that we can demonstrate closing it. So let's create a command button, give it a sensible name. CMD open seems pretty sensible. Change the label, open item list. On click event. Now you'll see that our class module this time, because we actually haven't saved the form as yet, is called form_form2. Now it doesn't matter if subsequently you then change the form, the class module will still be with it. It sticks to it like glue effectively. So you don't have to think, oh, I haven't saved the form, let's go back, save the form, come back in and have a different class module. Class module, although at the minute is called form_form2, as soon as you save the form, the class module gets renamed to stay with it. So we have our little subroutine ready, command open _ click. And all this is going to do is open a form. So do cmd.open form. And the form I'm trying to open is the FRM item list. None of the optional parameters. So straightforward return there. And this will quite happily do as it's told, which is to open the item list. So we can see that that works. What we'd like to do now though is add in our own close buttons. At the moment, we can go to the little X here. But once you turn off Access's interface, you need to make sure your own buttons exist. So we could add a close button on here, or we could add a footer and put a close button in the footer. What I would suggest is wherever you decide to put your close button, you become consistent with that. So all your forms have the close button in the same place. Commonly, it's usually up here on the top right, because that's where people expect it inside applications anyway, in the top right. So let's add a close button here. So just about there would be useful. So it's a little command button. And change the word command 23 to be an X. And then change the name to CMD close. Now, if all you're trying to do is get that button to close this form, that's probably the easiest bit of code you're ever going to write. So we want an on-click event, 3 dots, gives me the right class module and the right little snippet of routine, and it's simply do CMD dot close. And that's it. No parameters, nothing. Nice and short. We close that. We go back to our form, save the changes. At the moment, we're just changing the item list. View, and we see if our little X works. And it closes the form. We could do saving this little form we've created, FRM open list. Just to prove that it works, we go back, view the code, and you can see that the code sheet has been renamed, our form_FRM open list, and the code we created is still in place. However, what I want to do here is when I click Open Item List, quite happily works, but it leaves the FRM open list open. What we could do with is when you click this button, as well as opening that form, it closes the preceding form. Just a little bit of tidying up, unless obviously you want them to close this and be presented back with that. So sometimes you won't close the form you're moving from, but sometimes you will. It's nice to have the option. So we go into Design. We have our code here, our subroutine, which is opening the FRM item list. What I then want it to do is actually close the FRM open list. Now, it's not as straightforward as a do cmd.close, but it's quite close to it. cmd.close. However, because we are now closing not the current object, because it won't be the current object, as soon as I've opened the FRM item list, I'm no longer on the FRM open list. So I now need to run through the process of telling it what I would like to close. So as soon as I press space, I get all the optional parameters, and what I'm trying to close is a form, so AC form, comma. What's the name of the object, or in this case form, I'm trying to close? Well, it's FRM open list. Notice it must be in speech marks if it's an object name, and then comma for the final optional parameter, which is do we save any changes to the form? Do we prompt to ask the user if they want to save any changes to the form, or do we just save any changes to the form? Now, in theory, there shouldn't be any changes to the form because you built the database, it's all up and running. But when you're designing and playing and editing, you could at some point actually be partway through designing a form. But personally, I always tend to say AC save yes. So if you're in design mode and you've made a few changes, it just saves it if you happen to click a button that activates the close. Or you could choose the prompt by default, so you always ask, so you know that something's been changed. But certainly not no, otherwise you'd lose all your changes just from the matter of clicking a button here. So that's a little bit longer than when it's the active form. You actually have to specify its form you want to close, because you can close any of the objects that you have in Access, then name the objects, in this case FRM open list, and then whether you'd like to save the form by default or not by default, or be prompted. So let's go back to the form, save our changes and view. So open item list. Now when we click it, does as it's told, which is to open the FRM item list, but it also closes itself, which isn't itself at that point in time, effectively. So it goes back to the open form FRM open list and closes that as well. This little button just closes this active object. So our two close options are a lot longer if you want to close a named object that isn't the current object. Do command.close, the three optional parameters. If it's the current object, then you simply put do command.close and it will close the currently open active object that you are in when you trigger the close command.